I very much appreciate you being here on short notice on such a critical topic for the community and nationwide. And I'll explain why. I am very grateful and, of course, highly relieved, and my entire agency is, that most markers, nearly all markers of major violent crime have fallen since the spike that we went through during COVID. And that's certainly good news. But it has only afforded us the opportunity to reprioritize domestic violence once again. That is the one marker that is clearly remaining in a spike and just not coming down the way the rest of other major violent crimes and the homicide rate have been coming down markedly. And that means we have to redouble our efforts. And we've got some statistics we can share with you. I've got a graphic that I think it's actually already in your hands. Fantastic. Thank you to my team. I want to also say that there are a lot of sensitive details out about this extraordinary tragedy. There are a lot of family members and community members suffering greatly right now. And I'm going to avoid commenting because the very critical work of victim services advocates is underway, and the families need to learn the information that way in a safe way and delivered in a safe way. But I can't thank you enough for the service that you are providing right now in our ability to share information that could save a life. It's important to know that once a case opens here in the Pima County Attorney's Office, once police are at the scene, frankly, once a case is taken into Superior Court, if we can prosecute a felony domestic violence, the harm has already occurred. And so what can we do to focus our attention and inform ourselves to potentially save a life for a loved one, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, when you see the signs? We're talking about the cycle of control and isolation. If you are used to seeing or talking to your loved one regularly, and after a new relationship, you can't reach them anymore, you don't get to see them as much. If your loved one isn't making decisions for themselves anymore, but it feels like their partner is making all of the critical decisions, these are the kind of warning signs you can look out for. Not to mention, of course, physical signs of violence. One thing that we pointed out yesterday that we've done a real concerted effort on an education campaign, starting in our first year when we changed the form where the prosecutor of the night, if you will, covering initial appearances, fills out that form about how they are assessing whether a person is an ongoing threat of harm. That's the standard we teach. And we put a box on the form that if it is suspected and if there is evidence that a strangulation has occurred, we check that box on our form, asking that this person be held. And we cite the study of the National Institute of Health, and I'm going to read it because it's important to get these words just right. From the National Institute of Health, there is a high lethality, risk of death, associated with domestic violence strangulation. 43% of all women who are murdered have been previously strangled by their partner. When a person has been strangled by their partner, there is an 800% increase in the likelihood of that person being murdered. These cases are incredibly difficult to investigate and prosecute, and I'll explain it as simply as this. If your complexion is a certain way, bruising and marks may show up very easily and be photographed very easily. You can sometimes literally see what looks like fingers. If your complexion is any other than mine, quite frankly, people of color, it's not going to necessarily show. It's not going to necessarily show. And then we've got to move on to a highly technical strangulation test that has to be run by medical professionals, because there are other signs that occur when a person has lost oxygen for longer than is safe. And that's what shows up in a strangulation. There can be damage to the eyes that can show up, and oftentimes police are, and I need to tell you, this is very sensitive. I want to warn that this is sensitive information. Involuntary urination will occur because you've lost air for too long. Damage to your eyes, and those can show up in a strangulation exam and can later be used as evidence. This type of critical information, these warning signs, can and must be looked for. We need the community to stay focused on this critical issue and to help in any way you can. If you see something, say something. The emergency services that agencies like Emerge provide are not just for survivors. You can call and say, I think I'm seeing warning signs for a loved one or a neighbor or a coworker, and you can go through a conversation to see if you should be making a report. And with that, I'll do my best to take questions.
I'm going
Craig.
to try to keep this generic, but if you do have a case where a victim does say that they support bond reduction or movement to release the suspect, how much weight can you give that, or do you have to consider a factor that that person may still be influenced or intimidated by the victimizer?
Local retired law enforcement have shared with me that before Arizona law changed, it was required basically and functionally that a victim needed to be available and willing and promising to see a case all the way through and to testify against someone who had caused harm to them. And that made domestic violence prosecution somehow even harder than it is now, because even after significant changes to Arizona law, where the state can stand in and say this person is a risk to the community and not just this individual person. The state can play that role. One can only imagine how difficult it is to stand in the place and to not have the person who has suffered harm present in the room and assisting, sometimes absent or sometimes, and in fact, I believe more often than not in over half of domestic violence cases that we prosecute here, assisting the defense team. In fact, not helping to prosecute. And I'm talking generally speaking, these are the complexities. When someone is suffering this kind of harm, they may be supporting small children, and the person causing the harm is the only source of income and food and shelter. I mean, we are talking about desperate situations. And so prosecuting these cases has to be one of the most complex things that this office does.
So there can be instances where you may have to say, well, despite what you're saying about your sentiments towards a release or a bond reduction, we still think it's not in the best interest of you or the state's case.
We can and we do. These prosecutors are highly trained and their work is so delicate. And I watch every day as they make clear messages of empathy and respect and respecting the victim's position on a case, and then yet still arguing to the court, we believe there is very high risk, we believe there's a lot of danger going on, and the prosecutor has to handle both messages. And they do every day, because where we see an ongoing risk of harm, we have to act, and we do. Eric.
Laura, thank you. We have yet to get confirmation that what happened yesterday, in fact, is a domestic violence murder-suicide. I will ask first for your confirmation, if you can give it. And second, I will ask, why do you believe the judge made the decision he made? And if he had done it differently, do you believe 2 lives would have been saved at this moment?
I'll take the first question about confirmation. What I want to explain is that anytime we have a homicide that has occurred anywhere in Pima County, our on-duty veteran homicide prosecutor answers that on-call phone and goes out to the scene to do our own review. It's a very important way to understand evidence, to understand layout. So our on-call homicide prosecutor went out to the scene yesterday, and he personally confirmed for us that it was the same defendant we had been attempting to prosecute for very serious domestic violence allegations. It's that same prosecutor who was just briefed about what was going on at the OME this morning. So, and we appreciate that opportunity, that collaboration with law enforcement to make sure that whoever's covering our homicide phone day and night, I mean, it's usually 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm incredibly grateful for our prosecutors going out to cover that. What I want to say as to the second question, and generally speaking, this is a very human system. And goodness knows I know better than anyone that you can pick out 500 cases that we tried last year, and you can cherry pick 2 of them and complain about a couple of them. That's always going to be the case for law enforcement, for the prosecutor's office, and for the court. I will say importantly that there is always much to be learned. We have, in collaboration with Emerge, we have restarted in the last year, 2 years, what's called the DV Fatality Review Board, so that we all stakeholders get together and sit down and assess everything that happened up until a fatality. Because we can track these patterns for the reasons we discussed. Neighbors save neighbors' lives all the time when they call 911 because they're hearing sounds of distress. And so it's important to be honest and be humble and to look at where we can do better every single day. That's been our motto here as we started a second term. How can we do a little bit better tomorrow than we did today, every single day for the time that the people of Pima County give us?
What's the message you want the public to take away from this incident, whether domestic violence is or is not a factor in their lives?
I think, unfortunately, in 2025, and it's shocking to say this, we have to start by reminding that domestic violence is a very serious crime that should be prioritized, and it's very dangerous. This is a horrifying example of how death can occur quickly when violence escalates to this level. And I am deeply frustrated and shocked that the new federal administration under this president has been devaluing domestic violence, has been stripping domestic violence agencies, including our own victim services, of critical funding. All of these agencies are looking at massive funding cuts and layoffs of the people in place to care for domestic violence survivors so that we have survivors instead of losses. And so more than ever, I need Pima County and Tucson to do what you always do. Take good care of each other, no matter what's happening at the federal level. Now more than ever, this is becoming critical. Eric?
We understand, as we understand it through digging, that the victim wanted her partner out and on pre-trial services, and you obviously made a different recommendation. What do you say to those who wonder, well, they're in a relationship and they may not be seeing things clearly, thinking clearly, but what is it that you want to get across to the neighbors or family members or whatnot to act here?
Well, I want to say again that I am deeply sorry for the egregious loss that's been suffered by, no doubt, many, many people. My heart goes out to them. And I want to say again how grateful I am for the prosecutors who work these cases, because they are faced with some of the most difficult and challenging cases to try and to carry all the way into trial, and they do it every week. I think we have to get past the stigma of worrying that we might be stepping into other people's lives or invading privacy. I understand that, and that causes us all to pause. But if your gut instinct is telling you that someone in your life is not doing well and suffering, pick up the phone to Emerge. Pick up the phone to our victim services division here in the office. We've got an on-call advocate of the day taking calls like this. Reach out and ask the questions. These experts are waiting at the phone and in person to come out and assist. Our job here, obviously, I am very pleased to see the level of effort that came out of our office to have this person held initially and fighting all the way through strenuously to have this person held throughout the entirety of the case. But this is but one case, and we've got to pick ourselves back up and try on the hundreds of other open files that we have here, and to keep going, to keep informing ourselves of this critical data and how dangerous what we're talking about is, and to keep spreading the word, and which is what you're all doing right now, and I'm very grateful.
And I just want to go ahead.
Oh, I was just,
Please.
he asked if this was a murder-suicide. Can you confirm it or not?
It is best to not speculate this early as to what final determination will be. I can tell you that our prosecutor and law enforcement are not seeing any evidence of anything different than that. But as I said, the autopsies are underway right now, and it's always best to wait for final conclusions, which we can deliver at the time. At the time, if it's decided that there is no case to open here because everyone is deceased, we can let you know that when that final decision is made.
Are you able to share the name of the victim? We have the other name in some of the court files.
And I'll pause for just a second here to. Craig, can you give me that question again, please?
Can you share the name of the victim? We have the other name from some of the court files.
I think what you see universally in our statements is always trying to protect victims' rights and to be very sensitive to all the next of kin, again, that are suffering right now, and everyone who's suffering right now. What you see in my statement is reassurance that our agency tried everything we possibly could, but not casting blame. That's just not helpful. We have to all be supporting each other, everyone who's working in the system, law enforcement, prosecutors, defense attorneys, and the court. Everyone's trying their best to get to the right result. I'm going to go over here real quick, Eric. Thanks.
You touched briefly on how loss of federal support is making prosecuting these cases more difficult. Can you dig into that, like what specifically is being lost and whether Pima County is potentially facing a spike in domestic violence as a result?
Across the nation and locally, we are looking at devastating funding cuts. I would encourage you to talk to Emerge about what they're facing. I know that through loss of VOCA funding, which is the Victims of Crime Act, our Victim Services Division is going through an entire review about what positions we're going to be able to keep some other way in desperately seeking funding. It's shocking to me. There is a call center in DC, and their entire purpose was 50 people taking nationwide calls to help victims of crime navigate what their needs are. And it's completely shut down. The administration said this doesn't match our values, and just took the whole, it's federal, so they took 100% of the funding and it shut down. It's mind-blowing to me. I don't understand the thinking. Frankly, it's anti-victim, and it's also anti-police and anti-law enforcement. It's everything we're trying to do for public safety.
do want to get the timeline correct. So in the interim complaint that we have in the court document, the first, to my knowledge, the first complaint came at the end of May. And it's now 3.5 months later. Is that correct?
As I was briefed this morning, the incident in May stems from a mandatory report by a medical professional. And that's important to note too, right? I mean, some of us are in positions where we see what we're looking at, as a victim of crime, and we're mandated to report. We need the whole community to kind of act that way a little bit, right? But the May incident was a mandatory report by a medical professional treating the patient in question. Unfortunately, the accused, our defendant here, could not be found to be served. He was in the wind until the current incident where he was then arrested, and we were able to argue that we now have 2 extremely serious cases and argued for him to be held, and we secured a very high bond on the night of arrest in this instant case. And so he was in custody until he argued for his release later.
That was back in May.
So the May incident is where there's a warrant for him and probably what's called a BOLO, be on the lookout, for months, and he is never found until the next major crime for which we were prosecuting him for, a second strangulation.
If there is one message you want viewers and listeners to take away from this today, it's what?
Domestic violence can sometimes be minimized as private arguing between a domestic couple, between a couple living together. Please be on the lookout for signs that harm is occurring. Those cycles of power and abuse, signs of physical and emotional abuse. And if your gut is telling you that you're worried about this person, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone to Emerge, pick up the phone to my office, to the Victim Services Division. Reach out. You can't go wrong, and we might just save a life.
Were there any children in this relationship?
I can't confirm that at this time. It's not clear to me what the relationships are. Okay. Thank you again. I really appreciate your attention to this, all of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not sure which is which.
Thank you. Thank you very much.